This is ISIS, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, driving toward Baghdad. This video, posted on YouTube, purports to show militant fighters in captured American Humvees firing their guns in celebration. Another video posted online shows ISIS fighters parading hundreds of prisoners before a crowd. The captured men, now in civilian clothes, said to be members of the Iraqi police. And in this video, an ISIS fighter speaks to a large and vocal crowd of supporters in Mosul. The fighter, his face covered, tells the crowd his group will establish a state that will protect the rights of Sunni Muslims. Over the past year, the militant group has gained control of dozens of cities in northeastern Syria, and now, according to some experts, nearly half of Iraq.
Not only it controls 50% of Iraqi territories, it controls also large chunks of territories in Syria. And what they're trying to do is to really have a contiguity between Iraq and Syria in order to do what? In order to establish what they call a caliphate, or a centralized state governed by Islamic law.
But this is a jihadist group so extreme, even Al-Qaeda wants nothing to do with them.
We're in a pretty scary place if Al-Qaeda is disavowing people for their violence.
As these graphic photos show, in recent months, the group has executed enemies in Syria and then staged their deaths to look like crucifixions. And ISIS is apparently looking to the future, openly recruiting young boys and running schools to radicalize Syria's next generation. In ISIS territory, women have to wear full black veils in public. Here, ISIS troops burn cartons of cigarettes, part of a ban on smoking. Being accused of theft is enough to lose a hand. And for those who refuse to obey ISIS rules, the consequences are clear: torture, then death. Jonathan Mann, CNN.
It was an ecstatic moment after a week from hell for Iraq's Christians. The leader of Catholics here came to bring comfort and to tell them it was safe to go home. As many as 40,000 Christians have fled in the past few days as ISIS drew closer. Kurdish forces returned fire 2 days ago as ISIS mortared the town of Karakosh. There was panic as Christians feared their town and their churches would be destroyed. But today we met those who refused to leave.
It was very troubling here, but we stayed. In spite of all things, yes.
Is it very hard to be a Christian in Iraq now?
It is, but this is our land. We will fight for this land and we will stay here. We are not leaving.
When President Obama makes his case for destroying ISIS and how, he'll have three distinct audiences. First, the allies he needs to strengthen the core coalition of 10 countries formed at the NATO summit.
They need to be involved. This is their neighborhood. The dangers that are posed are more directed at them right now than they are us.
The president's second audience, Congress.
I do think it's important for Congress to understand what the plan is, to have buy-in, to debate it, and that's why we've been consulting with Congress throughout.
Just back from their long summer break, Congress is debating whether the president needs their approval for more military action.
Congress has to have a role in declaring war, and that one generation can't bind another generation. You can't vote in 2001 and say that that allows us to commit war in 2014.
Late today, Senator Bill Nelson introduced a bill that would authorize airstrikes inside Syria.
The head of the ISIS snake is not in Iraq. The head is in Syria. And so if you want to kill the snake, you got to go and cut off his head.
The president's third audience, ordinary Americans who are both war-weary and horrified by the barbaric beheadings of two fellow citizens.
On Syria, obviously this is a very tough issue. I have indicated repeatedly that President al-Assad has lost legitimacy, that he needs to step down. So far, he hasn't gotten the message and instead has doubled down in violence in the situation. But the point that you made about chemical and biological weapons, is critical. That's an issue that doesn't just concern Syria, it concerns our close allies in the region, including Israel. It concerns us. We cannot have a situation where chemical or biological weapons are falling into the hands of the wrong people. We have been very clear to the Assad regime, but also to other players on the ground, that a red line for us is we start seeing a whole bunch of chemical weapons moving around or being utilized. That would change my calculus.
Later in this video, the boy sits up. He seems to be struggling, but he is alive. But again, the intelligence community is telling members of the House and Senate that this is some of the proof of a sarin gas attack on the suburbs of Damascus, Syria. They say by the Assad regime, these videos do not prove that. These videos do not show who carried out this attack. Separately, the intelligence community says that they have evidence as to that. We have not been presented with that, the public or members of the media. Video number 9, we showed that already, the boy with the oxygen mask. Video number 10 from Kafr Batna as well shows a little boy maybe 2 years old as adults try to give him oxygen or water in a second. Very upsetting. The theory, of course, is that Damascus is an area that has been sympathetic and supportive to the rebels, and conventional weapon fighting by the Assad regime was not sufficient, and therefore this theory goes, not proven, theory goes, there was a chemical weapon attack on the suburb. We know a chemical weapon attack occurred. We do not know who did it. Video number 11 of the 13.
Military action.
What message will we send if a dictator can gas hundreds of children to death in plain sight and pay no price?
President Obama backpedaled in favor of an agreement to eliminate Syria's chemical weapons stockpile. While chlorine isn't as deadly as the sarin gas used last year, its use as a weapon of war is against international law, and it poses a dilemma for the U.S. as it struggles to rid Syria of its chemical weapons and deal with a war in which it has lost control. The Obama administration said it needs to fit it in proof before deciding how to respond.
We take all allegations of the use of chemicals in combat use very seriously. We're working to determine what has happened.
Though the blame was continually dumped on Assad for the chemical weapons attack, credible sources were saying otherwise. Even the UN.
Hi, Jerry Corsi. How are you?
I'm great. Great to be back with you. Thank you.
Well, my pleasure as always, sir, as you well know. Okay, 2 stories. I want to get to the one that's more recent, and that is, and I've been asking this question for the whole show. I asked this question yesterday, and the question is, how the heck do we know that it was Assad who set off the chemical weapons? I had John Bolton on the day that this attack took place, and John Bolton said, I put nothing past Assad, but it wouldn't really make sense because the UN inspectors had just arrived. He has Russia on his side at the UN, so nothing could get through the UN. He's winning. Why on earth would he pick that day of all days to go launch a chemical attack on civilians? And you write at WND today that, in fact, it was the rebels who launched that attack.
Well, I think the questions you're asking are exactly right. I mean, we published this article in WND going into the sources in the Middle East in Arabic, some of which are posted on YouTube, showing it's the rebels who are launching the chemical gas attacks, not the Assad government, but the rebels. And as you point out, there's no reason why the government's winning right now. Why would the government resort to these gas attacks, whereas the rebels are fairly desperate? And we show the different video clips with the arsenals of weapons, the weapons that come from Saudi Arabia, the actual launching. We've got videos of rebel groups in Syria launching chemical attacks on villages. So, you know, again, the UN has not given its word. There's been no official determination. And John Kerry, Secretary of State, comes out and says, we have incontrovertible proof. Well, you know, it's not like the Cuban Missile Crisis. We don't have John Kennedy sending Adlai Stevenson to the United Nations showing YouTube pictures of the missiles in Cuba. We don't see the evidence.
Right, and not only that, I mean, they didn't say what the evidence consists of, and how would they have gotten the evidence so quickly when just the other day, actually what Kerry said yesterday was, it's common sense that it would be Assad. Basically, that seems to me to be the evidence that they have, is that it's common sense, and then now I heard today that, well, we know the rebels don't have him. Well, if we know the rebels don't have him, then anytime chemical weapons have been used, and anytime they would have been used, we would immediately pin it on Assad, and so the warning would have been from the beginning that if they're used, we know it's Assad, but they never said that. They always left open the door that the rebels might have their hands on some chemical weapons. So this whole thing is crazy.
It's absolutely insane. I agree with you. And, what tipped me off to the whole issue is that Obama has said from the beginning, if you go back even to his August 20th, 2012 press conference, he starts out by saying Assad has lost his legitimacy and we have to remove Assad. That's Obama's political determination. He's clearly stated it. And now it looks like the charging of Assad, which this is the second time around Obama's done it, is a pretext for attacking Assad. I mean, you've got the Russians and you've got the Chinese and Assad himself saying, show me the proof, show me the beef. There's no proof here.
Right.
And it doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't. And now you got also Iran threatening that the Zionist state, of course, Israel, will be the first to feel the retaliation if there's an attack on Syria. So to lob a couple of missiles in, which will do nothing anyway, because they've already said their goal is not to take Assad out. So they'll lob a few cruises in, and it's going to open up this whole Pandora's box, which leads.
But something incredible happened. The people said no. Innumerable American soldiers went on social media in protest. A vote in the British Parliament was a total flop, leaving Prime Minister Cameron unable to deliver his support.
Mr. Speaker, on a point of order, there having been no motion passed by this House tonight, can the Prime Minister confirm to the House that he will not use the royal prerogative to order the UK to be part of military action, given the will of the House that has been expressed tonight, before there's been another vote in this House of Commons?
Order. It is, of course, not a matter for the Chair, but the Prime Minister has heard it and is welcome to respond.
Point of order, and I can give that assurance. Let me say the House has not voted for either motion tonight. I strongly believe in the need for a tough response to the use of chemical weapons, but I also believe in respecting the will of this House of Commons. It is very clear tonight that while the House has not passed a motion, it is clear to me that the British Parliament, reflecting the views of the British people, does not want to see British military action. I get that, and the government will act accordingly.
As the war drums start beating for the destruction of the savage ISIS army, we must ask ourselves, where did all of this begin? We must ask ourselves what really happened at Benghazi and why. We must ask why former presidential candidate John McCain snuck into Syria to show support for the so-called rebels. Qaeda offshoot al-Nusra has morphed into what is now the psychopathic ISIS. We must also ask ourselves, what is Islam all about? And why are we so cozy with the Saudi royal family that rules the country of its origin?